In the warm glow of an autumn evening, Logan sat in his living room, staring at the flickering television screen. The world outside carried on, oblivious to the silent storm brewing within his home. A year ago, he lost Amelia, his wife, and the love of his life, in a tragic accident. Since then, his days had been filled with the quiet struggle of raising his daughter, Claire, alone. Life wasn't perfect, but they were managing, until Linda entered their lives. At first, Linda seemed like a blessing. Her charm, kindness, and seemingly boundless energy brought light back into their home. Logan believed she could help him rebuild what had been shattered. But lately, Claire's behavior has changed. The once cheerful, talkative child now seemed withdrawn, her eyes carrying a shadow Logan couldn't ignore. She hesitated when Linda spoke and avoided her gaze. Something was wrong. And then, one evening, Claire gathered her courage and whispered something to Logan that would shatter his world. It was a truth that would force him to question everything about the woman he had let into their lives. A truth that demanded he take action. What had Claire revealed? Could Logan protect his daughter and uncover the hidden truths beneath the surface? This gripping tale of love, betrayal, and courage will take you on an emotional journey you won't forget. The air in the small apartment felt heavier than usual. Claire stood hesitantly at the doorway to the living room, her small hands fidgeting with the hem of her dress. Logan looked up from his seat on the couch, instantly noticing the tension in his daughter's posture. Much like Amelia's, her bright, curious eyes were red-rimmed as if she had been crying. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Logan asked gently, setting his coffee cup aside. Claire hesitated, her gaze fixed on the floor. It seemed she might retreat for a moment, unwilling to share what was troubling her. But then, she took a small, determined step forward. "Daddy," her voice was barely audible, quivering like a fragile thread. "Can I talk to you?" Logan's chest tightened. This wasn't Claire's usual playful chatter, or a request for help with her homework. Her tone carried a weight that alarmed him. "Of course, honey. Come here," he said, patting the space next to him on the couch. Claire climbed up, but instead of nestling close as usual, she sat stiffly, keeping a noticeable distance. Logan's heart sank. Whatever was on her mind was big, too big for an 8-year-old to carry alone. "What's wrong, Claire?" "You know you can tell me anything," he said softly, his hand resting reassuringly on her knee. She bit her lip, her tiny shoulders trembling. "It's about Linda," she whispered. Logan froze. The name hung in the air, heavy and ominous. He forced himself to remain calm, even as a wave of unease surged. "What about Linda, sweetheart?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. Claire took a deep, shaky breath and finally looked up, her tear-filled eyes locking onto his. "When you're not here, she's mean to me. She yells at me and she hurts me." For a moment, Logan's world seemed to stop. The words felt like a punch to his gut. He couldn't believe what he was hearing, yet the fear and pain in Claire's eyes left no room for doubt. "What do you mean, Claire?" Logan asked, his voice shaking. "What does she do?" Claire hesitated, clearly struggling to find the words. She grabs my arms hard when I don't do what she says. She pinches me sometimes. And she says mean things. Like that you don't love me, and I ruin everything." Logan's breath caught. Anger, disbelief, and guilt swirled inside him. How could he have missed this? How had he allowed this to happen under his roof? "Claire," he said, his voice breaking, "I believe you. I believe every word. And I promise I'll ensure she never hurts you again." Claire collapsed into his arms, sobbing. Logan held her tightly, tears streaming down his face. At that moment, he vowed to protect his daughter at all costs. That night, Logan barely slept. He replayed Claire's words over and over in his mind, each repetition fueling his guilt and anger. He thought of every interaction between Claire and Linda, moments he had dismissed as harmless or hadn't noticed. Linda had seemed so kind, so nurturing. How could he have been so blind? By morning, Logan had made up his mind. He couldn't let Linda stay in their home another day. But he also knew he needed to hear her side of the story. If Claire's accusations were true, Linda needed to leave, immediately. After dropping Claire off at school, Logan returned to the apartment and waited for Linda to come home from work. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the door, his heart pounding with anticipation and dread. When Linda finally arrived, her usual cheerful smile faltered when she saw Logan's stern expression. "Hey," she said cautiously, setting her purse down. "What's going on?" "Sit down," Logan said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Linda hesitated but complied, pulling out a chair across from him. "You're scaring me," she said, forcing a nervous laugh. "What's this about?" Logan took a deep breath, his fists clenched tightly under the table. "It's about Claire," he said. "She told me something I need you to explain yesterday." Linda's face remained unreadable, but her posture stiffened. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. "She said you've been hurting her," Logan said, his voice trembling with restrained anger. "That you yell at her, grab her, and tell her things like I don't love her. Is that true?" Linda's eyes widened, and she seemed genuinely shocked for a moment. Then, her expression shifted into something more calculated. "Logan, that's ridiculous," she said, her voice calm but defensive. "You know I love Claire. I'd never hurt her. Then how do you explain the bruises on her arms?" Logan countered, his voice rising. "Bruises in the shape of fingers, Linda." Linda's composure cracked for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "She's a kid, Logan. Kids get bruises all the time. She probably fell at school or something." "She said you did it," Logan shot back. "And I believe her." Linda's calm facade crumbled entirely. Her face twisted into a mask of anger and desperation. "She's lying," she snapped. "She's jealous, Logan. She doesn't want to share you with me. So she's making up stories to get me out of the picture." Logan slammed his fist on the table, making Linda flinch. "Don't you dare blame her," he growled. "Claire is 8 years old. She's scared and hurt. And you expect me to believe she's capable of plotting against you? No. I've seen the fear in her eyes, Linda. I've seen the bruises. This ends now." Linda's anger gave way to panic. "Logan, please," she begged. "I made mistakes, okay? I've been under a lot of stress, and maybe I was too harsh sometimes, but I love you. I love Claire. We can fix this." Logan stood, his voice cold and resolute. "There's nothing to fix, Linda. Pack your things and leave. And if you ever try to come near Claire again, I'll go to the police." Linda stared at him, stunned. "You're throwing me out? After everything we've been through?" "Yes," Logan said firmly. "Claire comes first. Always." For a moment, Linda seemed as though she might argue further. But then, seeing the determination in Logan's eyes, she stood and walked to the bedroom to pack her belongings. As the door closed behind her for the last time, Logan felt relief and lingering anger. He had protected his daughter, but the guilt of letting things go so far weighed heavily on him. He knew this was only the beginning. The road to healing would be long and difficult for both him and Claire. Yet, as he heard Claire's laughter echoing in his mind, Logan felt a renewed sense of purpose. They would face the future together, step by step, no matter how hard it might be. The morning sun seeped through the blinds of the small apartment, illuminating the quiet resolve etched on Logan's face. The air felt more precise, lighter, now that Linda was gone. Yet, beneath the surface, an unease lingered, an ache born of guilt and a father's fierce need to ensure his child's safety. Claire sat at the kitchen table across from him, nibbling on her toast. Though brighter than the day before, her eyes still held a shadow of fear. Logan could see how she jumped at small noises, and her gaze flickered to the front door as if expecting Linda to burst in at any moment. "Claire," Logan began softly, setting down his coffee. "I need to ask you something important." She looked up at him, her small hands clutching the edge of her plate. "What is it, Daddy?" Logan reached across the table, taking her tiny hand in his. "I need you to tell me everything Linda said or did when I wasn't here. I know it's hard, but it's the only way to ensure this never happens again." Claire hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. She scared me, Daddy," she whispered. "She said that if I told you, you'd send me away, that you didn't want me anymore." Logan's chest tightened. He leaned closer, his voice trembling with emotion. "Sweetheart, that's not true. You're my everything, Claire. my whole world. Nothing Linda said to you was true. Do you believe me? Claire nodded, though her expression was still wary. She would get mad when I didn't do things her way, she continued. Like, if I spilled something or wanted to stay up to wait for you to come home. She'd grab my arm hard and push me into my room. Logan felt anger rise within him, but he kept his voice calm for Claire's sake. Did she ever hurt you anywhere else? He asked gently. Claire nodded, pulling up her sleeve to reveal faint, fading bruises on her arm. Sometimes she pinched me when you weren't looking. And, she hesitated, glancing down at her lap. One time, she grabbed my hair when I woke. She said she'd lock me in the closet if I didn't go back to bed. Logan closed his eyes, struggling to keep his emotions in check. He had failed to protect his daughter once, but wouldn't let it happen again. Claire, he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil, thank you for telling me. You're so brave. I promise from now on, no one will ever hurt you again. Claire's small hand squeezed his. Do you promise, Daddy? I swear it, Logan said, his voice unwavering. Starting today, we're going to ensure this home is safe for both of us. As the day wore on, Logan's determination solidified into a plan. Though Linda was gone, her absence didn't erase the fear she had left behind. Logan needed closure, not just for himself but for Claire. He had to know the full extent of what had happened and ensure Linda could never come back into their lives. That evening, as Claire sat on the couch drawing pictures of their spy fortress, Logan gently broached the topic. Sweetheart, he began, sitting beside her. There's one more thing we need to do to ensure Linda can't hurt us anymore. Claire's pencil froze mid-sketch, and she turned to him with wide, nervous eyes. What is it, Daddy? Logan hesitated, hating that he had to involve her at all. But he also knew how innovative and resilient Claire was. I need to see how Linda behaves when she thinks I'm not here, he explained. If I can catch her doing something wrong, we can ensure she stays away forever. Claire's face paled. You mean, you're going to let her come back? Logan quickly shook his head. Not for real. I'll only pretend to leave for work, but I'll stay hidden. I'll be watching the whole time. If she tries anything, I'll stop her right away. Claire's hands clutched her sketchbook tightly. But what if she hurts me before you can stop her? Logan pulled her into a gentle embrace. I won't let that happen, Claire. I'll be watching and listening the whole time. And if you feel scared or in danger, just say the code word we picked. Strawberry ice cream, Claire whispered, her voice trembling. That's right, Logan said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The moment you say it, I'll come out. Do you trust me? Claire looked into his eyes for a long moment before nodding. I trust you, Daddy. Good, Logan said, his voice filled with conviction. We're a team, Claire. And together, we're going to make this right. The next day, Logan set the plan into motion. He called Linda, carefully masking his anger, and pretended to regret their argument. I think we need to talk, he said, his tone conciliatory. For Claire's sake. Linda's response was immediate, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Oh, Logan, I'm so glad you called. I've been thinking about us, too. When can I come over? Tomorrow morning, Logan replied, keeping his voice neutral. I'll leave for work, but you and Claire can talk. Maybe it'll help her feel more comfortable with you again. Linda agreed, her eagerness betraying her true intentions. Logan hung up, his jaw clenched. He hated the idea of her setting foot in their home again, but he knew it was necessary. That night, Logan and Claire went over the plan one last time. They practiced acting normal, with Claire greeting Linda as if nothing was wrong. They rehearsed the code word and reminded each other of their roles. Remember, Logan said, his voice firm but gentle, the moment you feel scared, say strawberry ice cream. I'll be right there. Claire nodded, clutching her teddy bear. I'll try, Daddy. You don't have to try, Logan reassured her. You're already the bravest girl I know. The following morning, Logan waited until Linda arrived. She greeted Claire with exaggerated cheerfulness, her tone sickly sweet. Good morning, sweetheart. I've missed you so much. Claire muttered a quiet hello, keeping her eyes on the floor. Logan watched from the hallway, his heart aching at the fear in his daughter's posture. I'll see you both tonight, Logan said aloud, grabbing his keys and stepping out the front door. Once outside, he waited a few moments before slipping back in through the spare key hidden under the doormat. Quietly, he went to Claire's room, where he hid in the closet, leaving the door slightly ajar. Minutes turned into hours as Logan listened, his heart pounding with every sound. Linda's voice shifted from sweet to sharp, revealing her true nature in subtle tones. And then, the moment came. "Listen to me, you little liar," Linda hissed. "You've been filling your father's head with stories, right? Do you think I don't know what you're trying to do?" "I didn't lie," Claire stammered, her voice trembling. Linda's response was cold and menacing. "If you don't tell him you made it all up, you'll regret it." Before Logan could hold himself back, Claire's small voice rang out with the words he had been waiting for. "Strawberry ice cream." In an instant, Logan burst from the closet, his anger and protective instinct surging. "That's enough, Linda," he roared. Linda stumbled back, her face pale with shock. "Logan, what are you doing here?" "I've been here the whole time," Logan said, his voice trembling with fury. "I've seen and heard everything. And now you're done." Linda stood frozen, her face pale and her expression a mix of shock and fear. She looked at Logan, who stood protectively between her and Claire, his eyes blazing with fury. For the first time since Logan had met her, Linda seemed to have lost the ability to mask her true nature. "Logan," she stammered, attempting to regain her composure. This isn't what it looks like." Logan's jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his sides. "Don't even try," he said, his voice cold and relentless. "I've heard every word, Linda. Every threat, every lie, and every disgusting thing you've done to my daughter." Linda's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. "Logan, you're misunderstanding," she said, her voice trembling but with a hint of defiance creeping in. "You've only heard part of the story. Claire has been difficult." "Stop," Logan roared, his voice booming in the small room. Both Linda and Claire flinched at the sound. "Don't you dare blame her. She's a child. You're the adult, and you've abused her trust, her safety, and her innocence. There's no excuse for what you've done." Linda's mask cracked further, and her tone shifted to desperation. "Logan, please. I was just trying to help her. She's been acting out, and I thought discipline." "Discipline?" Logan cut her off, his voice trembling with controlled rage. "Discipline doesn't leave bruises. Discipline doesn't make a child afraid to be in her own home. You didn't discipline Claire. You terrorized her." Linda's mouth opened, but no words came out. She glanced at Claire, who clutched her teddy bear tightly, tears streaming down her face. The sight seemed to unsettle Linda, but it wasn't guilt in her eyes. It was fear. Fear of losing control over the situation. "Logan," she said softly, her voice dripping with calculated sweetness, "we've been through so much together. I love you. I love Claire. Let's not throw this all away over a misunderstanding." Logan's laugh was bitter and humorless. "Love? Is that what you call this? You don't love Claire. You hurt her. And you don't love me either. If you did, you wouldn't have tried to destroy my family." Linda's expression hardened. The mask of charm and innocence shattered utterly, revealing a cold, cruel woman beneath. "Fine," she snapped. "Believe what you want. But if you think you can just throw me out like trash, you're mistaken." Logan took a step closer to her, his voice dangerously low. "You're right. I'm not throwing you out like trash. I'm throwing you out like the predator you are. And if you ever come near my daughter again, I'll make sure the police know everything." Linda's eyes narrowed, but Logan could see the fear behind her bravado. "You wouldn't," she said, her voice wavering. "You can't prove anything." Logan pulled his phone from his pocket, holding it up. "Oh, I can. I recorded everything, Linda. Every threat, every insult, every moment you hurt my daughter. It's all here. And if you push me, I'll ensure it gets into the right hands." Linda's face turned ashen. She stared at the phone as though it were a weapon aimed directly at her. "You wouldn't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Try me," Logan replied, his voice steely. "Now, pack your things and leave. If you're not gone in 10 minutes, I'll call the police." Linda left the apartment hurriedly, her face twisted with anger and humiliation. Logan locked the door behind her, leaning against it momentarily, and let out a shaky breath. The adrenaline coursing through him began to fade, leaving a profound exhaustion in its place. But there was no time to rest. Not yet. Daddy? Claire's small voice broke the silence. She stood in the hallway, her teddy bear clutched tightly to her chest. Her eyes were wide, her face streaked with tears. Logan crouched down to her level, opening his arms. Come here, sweetheart. Claire rushed to him, burying her face in his chest. Is she gone? She asked, her voice muffled against his shirt. She's gone, Logan said, his voice firm but gentle. She's never coming back. I promise. Claire looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. What if she tries to come back? Logan placed his hands on her tiny shoulders, his gaze steady and determined. She won't. I'll make sure of it. Starting today, we will make this home the safest place in the world for us. Claire nodded slowly, her lips trembling. Are you mad at me, Daddy, for not telling you sooner? Logan's heart ached at the question. He pulled her into another hug, holding her as tightly as possible without hurting her. No, Claire. Never. None of this is your fault. You're so brave for telling me the truth, and I'm so proud of you. They stayed like that for a long moment, the weight of the past few weeks slowly lifting. Logan could feel Claire's small body relaxing against him, her trust in him beginning to rebuild. Eventually, he pulled back and gave her a small smile. What do you say we take steps to improve our spy fortress? Claire's eyes lit up, a small smile breaking through her tears. Can we get cameras? And a secret password for the door? Logan chuckled softly. Absolutely. Cameras, new locks, a security system. The works? No one's getting in without our permission. The next day, Logan could have spent more time. He called a locksmith to install high-security locks on every door and hired a security company to set up cameras and sensors throughout the apartment. Claire watched the entire process with fascination, her fear slowly giving way to excitement. Daddy, she said as the locksmith finished installing the final lock. Can I pick the secret password? Of course, Logan replied, ruffling her hair. What do you have in mind? Claire thought for a moment before grinning. Agent Brave. Logan smiled, his chest swelling with pride. That's perfect. Agent Brave it is. As the days went by, the apartment began to feel like a fortress, not just physically but emotionally. Claire started to laugh again, her eyes shining with the light that Linda had tried to extinguish. Logan, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had failed to protect Claire once, but would never let it happen again. One evening, as they sat on the couch eating pizza and watching a spy movie, Claire turned to him with a thoughtful expression. Daddy, she said, do you think Linda will try to hurt someone else? Logan's smile faded. He looked at his daughter, her innocence and wisdom mingling in a way that broke his heart. I don't know, sweetheart, he admitted, but I promise you this. I'll do everything I can to ensure she doesn't. Okay, Claire said, snuggling closer to him. I trust you. Logan kissed the top of her head, his resolve hardening. The battle with Linda might be over, but he knew the road to healing was just beginning. Together, he and Claire would face whatever challenges lay ahead, their bond more vital than ever. And in that quiet moment, as the credits rolled on the screen and Claire's laughter filled the room, Logan felt a deep sense of peace. They had endured the storm, and they had survived. Now, it was time to rebuild. Together, the peace Logan and Claire had begun to rebuild felt fragile, like the delicate surface of a frozen lake. As much as Logan wanted to believe Linda was genuinely gone from their lives, the memory of her final, venomous words haunted him. Late one evening, Logan sat alone in the living room, the house eerily quiet except for the rhythmic hum of the security cameras he had installed. He stared at the small monitor on the coffee table, where live footage of their front door and windows played on a loop. Everything seemed calm, but Logan couldn't shake the feeling that Linda might still try to return. Just as he reached for his coffee cup, Claire's bedroom door creaking open startled him. Her petite figure appeared in the hallway a moment later, clutching her teddy bear. Daddy, she said, her voice tinged with worry. Logan immediately stood, crossing the room to meet her. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Did you have a bad dream?" Claire nodded, her eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. "I dreamed Linda came back," she whispered. "She was yelling at me, and you weren't there." Logan knelt to her level, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm here, Claire, and I'm not going anywhere. No one, especially not Linda, will ever hurt you again." Claire sniffled and leaned into his embrace. "How do you know, Daddy? What if she comes back when we're not expecting it?" Logan hesitated, the weight of her question pressing heavily on his heart. "Because," he said after a moment, "we've done everything to make this home safe. We have the locks, the cameras, and the alarm system. And most importantly, we have each other. If anything happens, we'll handle it together." Claire nodded slowly, but the fear in her eyes lingered. Logan knew words alone wouldn't be enough to erase the trauma Linda had caused. He tightened his arms around her, silently vowing to do whatever it took to help her feel safe again. The following morning, Logan took Claire out for a fun day. They had both been on edge since Linda's departure, and he hoped a change of scenery might ease some of the tension. "How about a trip to the park?" he suggested over breakfast. "We can pack a picnic and bring your sketchbook." Claire's face lit up with excitement. "Can we bring the walkie-talkies too? Like spies on a mission?" Logan chuckled. "Absolutely. Agent Brave and Agent Dad, reporting for duty." By mid-morning, they were seated on a grassy patch in the park, the sunlight filtering through the trees. Claire was sprawled out on a blanket, doodling in her sketchbook, while Logan leaned back against a tree trunk, enjoying the rare moment of calm. Claire seemed like her old self again, carefree and full of curiosity for the first time in weeks. But the serenity didn't last. As Logan scanned the park, his eyes landed on a figure in the distance that made his blood run cold. Linda. She was sitting on a bench near the playground, her gaze fixed on them. Logan's heart began to race. He quickly moved to position himself between Claire and Linda, his mind scrambling to figure out what to do. Should he confront her? Call the police? "Daddy, what's wrong?" Claire asked, noticing the sudden tension in his posture. Logan forced a reassuring smile. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just stay right here, okay? Don't move." Claire's eyes widened, but she nodded, trusting her father implicitly. Logan stood and walked toward Linda, his every step deliberate. As he approached, she looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and defiance. "Logan," she said, her voice smooth but laced with a hint of mockery. "Fancy seeing you here." "What are you doing here, Linda?" Logan asked, his voice low and controlled. "I told you to stay away." Linda leaned back against the bench, her lips curling into a smirk. "It's a public park, Logan. Am I not allowed to enjoy a sunny day?" Logan's fists clenched at his sides. "Don't play games with me. You know exactly what you're doing. I see you looking at Claire. If you take a step toward her, I won't hesitate to call the police." Linda's expression hardened, the fake charm dropping from her face. "You think you can keep me away forever?" she hissed. "She's not just your daughter, Logan. I was part of her life, too." "You were never part of her life," Logan shot back, his voice rising. "You hurt her. You terrified her. And you have no right to even say her name." Linda stood, her movements sharp and deliberate. "You're making a mistake, Logan," she said, her voice dripping with menace. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." Logan stepped closer, his eyes blazing. "Yes, it is. Stay away from us, Linda. If I see you near Claire again, I won't just call the police. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are and what you've done." Linda's smirk faltered, but she quickly recovered. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement. Logan watched her go, his heart pounding in his chest. When he returned to Claire, she looked at him with wide, questioning eyes. "Was that Linda?" she asked softly. Logan knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It was, but she's gone now. And she's not coming back. I promise." "Are you sure?" Claire's voice wavered, her earlier excitement replaced with unease. Logan nodded firmly. "I'm sure. and I will do everything I can to keep you safe, no matter what. Claire wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. I love you, Daddy, she whispered. I love you too, Claire, Logan replied, his voice thick with emotion. More than anything in the world. As they packed up their picnic and headed home, Logan couldn't shake the feeling that Linda's threat wasn't idle. But one thing was sure. He would fight with everything he had to protect his daughter. The battle might not end, but Logan knew he wasn't alone. He had Claire. They were more vital than Linda could ever understand. The encounter with Linda at the park left Logan on edge, though he hid his anxiety from Claire. Back at the apartment, as Claire happily tinkered with her walkie-talkie, Logan sat at the kitchen table, his mind racing. Linda's parting words echoed in his ears. This isn't over. Logan knew Linda's defiance wasn't a hollow threat. He had seen the determination in her eyes. It wasn't just about her leaving. It was about losing control, and people like Linda didn't let go quickly. As he sipped his coffee, Logan decided he needed more than just the new locks and cameras to keep them safe. He called a family friend, Detective Mike Grayson, a no-nonsense man with decades of experience in law enforcement. Logan, Mike said after hearing the whole story, his voice heavy with concern, you need to file a restraining order immediately. And if she shows up again, don't hesitate, call me. Thanks, Mike, Logan said, relief flooding his voice. I just don't want to scare Claire more than she already is. Mike's tone softened. Logan, Claire's already been through enough. This isn't about scaring her. It's about giving her the peace of mind that you're doing everything possible to protect her. You're a good dad. Don't forget that. Hanging up the phone, Logan felt a renewed sense of determination. He spent the rest of the evening reviewing the footage from the security cameras, ensuring there hadn't been any signs of Linda near the apartment. Each angle showed only quiet hallways and empty doorways, but Logan couldn't shake the unease creeping up his spine. The following morning, Logan woke early and prepared a plan of action. He called his lawyer to begin filing a restraining order against Linda. The paperwork was overwhelming, but Logan pushed through, determined to leave no loophole she could exploit. After dropping Claire off at school, he traveled to the courthouse to file the necessary documents. Putting his concerns into writing felt empowering and chilling. It was a stark reminder of how much Linda had infiltrated their lives. When he returned home, Logan installed an additional motion sensor by the back door, a precaution he hoped he wouldn't need. That night, as he tucked Claire into bed, she looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. Daddy, do you think Linda will try to come back? Logan sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair. I won't let her, Claire. I promise. You're safe now, and I'll ensure it stays that way. Claire hugged her teddy bear tightly. Okay, Daddy. I believe you. Her words filled Logan with both pride and a renewed sense of responsibility. He kissed her forehead, turned on her nightlight, and quietly left the room. Standing in the hallway, he glanced at the live feed from the cameras on his phone, ensuring that all was secure once again. But as he stared at the screen, a notification popped up, a motion alert from the front camera. Logan's stomach dropped. He quickly clicked on the alert, his breath catching as he saw a shadowy figure lingering near the apartment door. He didn't wait to think. Grabbing the baseball bat he had tucked behind the front door, he unlocked the chain and swung the door open, stepping into the hallway. But the figure was gone when he looked, leaving only an eerie silence. Logan was visibly tense the following day, but tried to hide it from Claire. As they ate breakfast, she chatted about an art project at school, her innocent excitement contrasting the storm raging in Logan's mind. He smiled and nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere, replaying the image of the figure outside their door. After dropping Claire off at school, Logan decided to take more concrete action. He called Detective Grayson again. Mike, someone was outside my apartment last night, Logan said, his voice low but urgent. I didn't see their face, but I'm almost certain it was Linda. Mike's tone was immediately serious. Did you check your security footage? I did, Logan replied. The camera caught a figure near the door, but they left before I could confront them. I'll send a patrol car to keep an eye on your building, Mike said. In the meantime, keep documenting everything. Every interaction, every sighting. If this goes to court, You'll need all the evidence you can get. Thanks, Mike, Logan said, his grip tightening on the phone. I just want this to end. That evening, as Logan picked Claire up from school, he noticed her teacher, Mrs. Harris, standing by the classroom door. She gestured for him to come closer. Mr. Logan, can I have a word? Of course, Logan said, his brow furrowing. He glanced at Claire, who was busy showing her drawing to a friend, and then turned back to the teacher. Mrs. Harris lowered her voice. Claire mentioned something today about being afraid someone might come to the school to take her. She said nothing, but I could tell she was distraught. Logan's heart sank. He had tried so hard to shield Claire from his fears, but clearly, she had picked up on more than he realized. Thank you for telling me, he said. We've been dealing with some challenges at home, but I'm doing everything I can to make her feel safe. Mrs. Harris nodded, her expression compassionate. She's a brave little girl, Mr. Logan. But if there's anything the school can do, extra precautions, for example, please let us know. I'll think about it, Logan said, his mind racing. As he walked out of the school with Claire, he resolved to take even more significant measures to protect her. That night, Logan sat Claire down for a conversation. Sweetheart, he began, his voice soft but serious. I know you've been feeling scared, and I want you to know it's okay to talk to me about it. Claire nodded, her big eyes filling with tears. I just don't want her to take me away, Daddy. Logan's heart broke at her words. He pulled her into his lap, holding her close. No one is ever going to take you away, Claire. You're safe with me, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep it that way. As they sat together, Logan's phone buzzed with another notification. A motion alert from the front door. His body tensed, but he quickly composed himself for Claire's sake. Why don't you draw something for me? He suggested gently. I'll be right here. Claire nodded and headed to her room. Once she was out of earshot, Logan opened the app, his breath catching as the camera showed a small envelope lying on the doormat. The figure who had left it was already gone. Cautiously, Logan opened the door and retrieved the envelope. Inside was a piece of paper with a chilling message. You can't hide her forever. Logan's hands shook as he read the note, anger and fear swirling. But as he closed the door and locked it tightly, he knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't let Linda win. Not now. Not ever. Logan sat at the kitchen table, the note clenched tightly in his hand. The message was brief, but its meaning was clear. Linda wasn't done. As much as he wanted to brush it off as an empty threat, his instincts told him otherwise. He knew she was testing his limits, hoping to intimidate him into submission. But she had underestimated just how far he would go to protect Claire. The following day, Logan met with Detective Grayson, handing over the note and the security footage. Grayson examined the letter with a grim expression, nodding as he slipped it into an evidence bag. This is exactly what we needed, he said. It's enough to escalate your restraining order and push for criminal charges if she reappears. Do you think she'll stop? Logan asked, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Grayson's lips pressed into a thin line. People like Linda rarely stop on their own, but now she's officially in our system. If she makes one wrong move, we'll be ready. Logan returned home that afternoon, determined to ensure Claire felt secure. He sat her down in the living room, holding her small hands in his. Claire, he began gently, I need you to know you're safe. The police are helping us, and I've done everything I can to ensure no one can hurt you. Claire nodded, her eyes searching his face. But what if Linda comes back, Daddy? What if she finds a way? Logan gave her hands a reassuring squeeze. If she does, we'll be ready. And I'll make sure she never gets near you again. You have my promise. For the next few days, Logan worked tirelessly to strengthen their defenses. He updated the security system, adding panic buttons in Claire's and living rooms. He even enrolled her in a local self-defense class for kids, not to make her feel responsible for her safety, but to empower her with confidence. Sitting on the couch watching a movie one night, Claire looked up at him and said, Daddy, I don't feel as scared anymore. Logan's heart swelled with pride. That's because you're brave, Claire. Braver than anyone I've ever known. She smiled and snuggled closer to him, the tension in her tiny body slowly melting. Logan held her tightly, silently vowing to keep her safe no matter what. It was a crisp Saturday morning when everything came to a head. Logan and Claire were at the local park, enjoying the autumn air. Claire was drawing in her sketchbook, her laughter blending with the cheerful sounds of children playing nearby. Logan watched her, his heart light for the first time in weeks. Then he saw her, Linda. She was standing at the edge of the park, partially obscured by a tree, her eyes locked on Claire. Logan's entire body went rigid. He stood, his protective instincts roaring to life. "Claire," he said, keeping his voice calm, "stay right here, okay? Don't move." Claire nodded, her expression instantly worried, but she stayed seated as Logan walked toward Linda. "Linda," he said when he was close enough, his voice low and firm, "you need to leave. Right now." Linda stepped out from behind the tree, her expression cold. "I just wanted to see her," she said, her voice sharp and unapologetic. "You can't keep her from me forever. You have no right to see her," Logan snapped, his anger barely contained. "You've done enough damage. If you don't leave now, I'll call the police." Linda's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Call them? Do you think I care? I'll tell them you're keeping her from someone who loves her." Logan took a step closer, his voice dangerously low. "Love? Is that what you call the bruises you left on her? The nights you terrified her? I have proof of everything, Linda. If you push me, I'll make sure the police throw every charge they can at you." Linda's bravado faltered momentarily, but she quickly recovered, her eyes narrowing. "You think you're so righteous, don't you, Logan? But tell me something. You can't protect her from everything." Logan's fists clenched, but before he could respond, he heard a small, determined voice behind him. "Yes, he can." Both Logan and Linda turned to see Claire standing a few feet away, her teddy bear clutched in one hand and her chin raised defiantly. "Daddy always protects me," Claire said, her voice trembling but strong. "And I don't want to see you ever again." Linda's face twisted angrily, but Logan stepped between them, his voice sharp. "You heard her, Linda. Leave. Now." For a moment, Linda hesitated as if weighing her options. Then, with a huff of frustration, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement. Logan watched her go, his body tense until she was out of sight. He turned to Claire, kneeling to her level. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Claire nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I was scared, Daddy, but I knew you'd protect me." Logan pulled her into a tight hug, his voice thick with emotion. "You're so brave, Claire. I'm so proud of you." The following week, Linda was arrested after violating the restraining order and attempting to enter the apartment building. Detective Grayson assured Logan that the evidence they had, combined with Linda's repeated threats, would keep her away for good. With Linda out of their lives, Logan and Claire finally began to heal. Their apartment, once a place of tension and fear, transformed into a haven of laughter and love. They spent their days playing games, going on adventures, and dreaming up new additions to their spy fortress. One evening, as they were cuddled on the couch watching a spy movie, Claire looked up at Logan and said, "Daddy, do you think we're safe now?" Logan kissed the top of her head, his heart full. "Yes, Claire, we're safe. And no matter what happens, I'll always protect you." Claire smiled, snuggling closer to him. "You're the best spy partner ever." Logan chuckled softly, his chest swelling with pride and relief. "And you're the bravest agent I've ever known." As the credits rolled and Claire drifted off to sleep in his arms, Logan stared out the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. He knew the road to recovery would still have its challenges, but he felt at peace for the first time in a long while. Together, he and Claire had faced their darkest fears, and together, they had found their way back to safety and hope. And in that quiet moment, Logan knew they could face anything the future held, so long as they faced it together.